Everybody, it's after 5:30. It's April the 9th. We're going to start the budget workshop, 2000, April 9th, 2018. Phyllis?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we're going to be reviewing the budget for the general fund. We will start with the revenue side. And the first thing we will talk about is property tax. And as everyone knows, we're in the middle of the reappraisal process. The reappraisal has been done, and we have been given the assessment numbers. At this time, we don't know what the certified tax rate's going to be, so we can't make a good decision as to how we're going to approach that. The state requires us to not make a profit off of it. So I've given you a handout of the comptroller's office, and it explains exactly how the certified tax rate works and what the city's responsibility is to the citizens. We do know, we got the assessed value, and we do know that for the first time ever, the city of Laverne is worth over $1 billion. It's actually $1.1 billion. We've generally been in the 800 to 900 million, right at $900 million. So that's good news for the city. And generally, when this happens, we'll have to, either go with the certified rate or something thereof that's going to be sort of equal to what we're currently charging for the tax rate. I have done a little bit of an analysis just to give you an example of property tax rates. I took a home that was valued at last year at $168,000. The assessed value was $42,050. Of course, our tax rate is 95 cents per 100 assessed value. And then I took the new value that's out on the county records of $235,400, which now makes this home assessed value at $58,850. If we were to not do anything with our tax rate and keep it the same, that person's tax bill would be $559, and that person would probably be up here complaining real quick. So I did just some scenarios, to get a certified rate that's equal to what the current rate was last year and the current value. We're looking at somewhere around 67, 68 cents per 100. And Bruce, you can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, and then I did some other scenarios, if we raised it a couple of pennies here and there, what the differences would be. But at this time, we just don't know what the certified tax rate would be. And these are just examples because we don't want the citizens to get alarmed because the tax rates, the tax bills should, kind of be the same within a few pennies of what it is right now. So that's basically how that works. Even though the values go up, it doesn't mean the tax rate's going to go up or tax rate will stay the same. So hopefully we can, get a good certified rate and maintain our current revenue for property tax. With that being said, I have estimated the property tax to be somewhere around $7.8 million. In the forecast, forecasted for this year, we're going to wind up about $7.5 million. I looked today, and we've already collected about $7.8 million. So I feel comfortable going with 7.8 for next year. We have to allow for a certain percentage of write-offs or non-collectibles, and then we don't know what what property tax we'll be picking up as far as new homes or new businesses. So the number there is probably just a tad bit conservative, but it's we don't want to get ourselves into incorrect numbers. So the rest of your property tax accounts, which are the delinquent years 1 through 8, actually 1 through 9, kind of just budgeted about the same standard as what we normally do. We get a little bit more in the first couple of years, and then it dwindles down. Interest and penalty, we kept that revenue stream about the same. We picked up a little bit on ad valorem tax this year. Payment in lieu of doesn't increase a whole lot. We actually only collected 157 last year, so I kind of dropped that down just a little bit. Payments in lieu of, last year we collected right at 420, so I budgeted for 420 for next year. Our local sales tax, as you know, we've done really well in sales tax. Last year we collected approximately 7.7. Being a little conservative and going with 7.5 because we did lose a little bit of the grocery tax, and that's now going to fuel tax, which is in the State Street Aid Fund. There's, Bruce, I know you've probably been getting the emails from TML too. There's some issues going on right now with the state shared sales tax, where the county mayors are wanting to take a piece of that, but hopefully that will not pass, and we'll be able to maintain where we're at with the state shared. Alcoholic beverage tax, we were down a little bit last year, so I budgeted $3,500 for that. The wholesale beer tax is 17%. We did pretty well last year at 484. We're forecasting at 458, so I budgeted 460. The wholesale liquor tax, 5%. We came in about 158 last year, and I'm budgeting 155 for next year. Civil penalties and beer permits, I left that budget the same. Business tax, if you'll notice that last year we ended the year with approximately $1,072,000. Looks like we're going to forecast around $1,033,000. I'm budgeting $1 million for next year. Business license and permits, we've done pretty good in the last couple of years, not, you know, for that line item. So I'm going to keep it at about $3,000. I increased it over $1,500 from last year's budget. Cable TV, Comcast franchise, we collected about $285. Conservatively estimate about $275 for next year. Cable TV franchise AT&T, we came in right around a little over 9,000, forecasting right at 9,900. So I budgeted 10,000 on that one. Cable TV franchise, Tennessee Telephone, I think that's TDS. We have collected 83,000 last year, and it looks like we're going to forecast about 85. I'm budgeting 80 for next year. Hotel motel tax, we're running about 80, in the mid 80s. I'm budgeting 84 for next year. The beer license and application fees, we kept the budget the same at 2,000. The liquor license application fees kept the budget the same at 500. Liquor license privilege tax restaurant, increased that to 1,000. We've collected a little more unusual amount this in 2016-17, but it doesn't seem to be reappearing in 17-18, so it could have been just a one-time collection there. Building permits, this is one where it's just really kind of hard to speculate. I'm going to estimate about 260,000. Kyle has indicated to me that, you know, we anticipate building permits to do fairly well the rest of the year. It looks like we're going to come in somewhere around 289, 290 this year. As you can see the trend, we have a huge trend, huge gap in between the years. There's kind of no rhyme and reason to that. I mean, we know what the reason is, the economy, but so just to be on the conservative side, we're doing we budgeted 260. Plumbing permits, put 20,000 in. We're forecasting around that amount this year. Mechanical permits, increased it to 15,000. We've done fairly well on that line. Plan reviews, last couple of years we've done really well. You know, we don't know if that'll continue, so we conservatively estimate about 30,000. Minimum inspection fees and other permits, estimated about 35,000. Moving on down to the state revenue, we have a BEST grant that we participate in. We're expecting that to be around $8,000. We have overtime reimbursement from the DEA for the police overtime. Put that in at $7,000. We get reimbursed for fire and police training from the state. There's a pretty rigorous qualifications to get that reimbursement. They have to meet so much requirements, and we're estimating about $24,000 for fire and $32,000 for police. We're estimating the state sales tax to be $2.9 million, and that does include about $200,000 from the census that we think that we're going to be able to pick up on from the new census numbers. State income tax, this one is one that's going away. It's supposed to have already been eliminated, but we seem to be getting some residual income tax off of that. So each year I'm trying to trend that down and to let.
Is that like the hall tax?
Yes, that is the hall tax. State beer tax, pretty much trend about the same every year, around $15,000. State alcoholic and beverage tax, we're doing fairly well this year, so I'm estimating about $9,000 for next year. State gasoline inspection fee, pretty much the same every year, around $65,000. And then state street contract maintenance. This is the TDOT contract that we have for mowing and litter pickup. It's been the same for several years in a row now, which is $4,220. We do bill them sometimes quarterly, sometimes twice a year for the monthly mowing, and we bill the mowing 6 times a year, and then we bill the litter pickup 12 times a year. Fees and commissions, we're trending about $4,000. Police security services, I didn't budget for anything there because that's just one of those unknown. We don't know if we're going to be doing security service or not. Didn't budget any revenue for the Veterans Memorial Wall. Pretty much that's for the plaques, and I don't know how full we are on the plaques. If the wall is...
We're still putting bricks and stuff on
Bricks.
those.
I mean the bricks.
Yeah.
Okay. It's been really slow this year. So I didn't budget for anything there. League fees, we don't have the league anymore, but we still do get some fees for tournaments and some small minor things. Recreation fees, renting the parks, and I think this might cover the pavilions. I'm not real sure. Yes, I think it does. It does cover the pavilions. And then we have field rentals, which is $1,000. I'm estimating about $1,000. And then we have the rental of the multipurpose building, which does bring in a little bit of revenue. So I'm estimating about $12,000 for that for next year. Moving on down to our library revenue section. We have the library fines and penalties. Last year we did about $3,900, so I'm estimating about $3,000 for next year. Donations and gifts, really don't have a good, set number on that, so we're budgeting $500 on that. Copies, we do quite a bit on copies. Forecasting a little bit low this year, so I kind of budget a little bit low for next year. Fax copies revenue, budgeted about $6,000 on that. Minimum budget for the lost books, lost cards, and sale of used books. And then we have the children's program revenue, very minimal amount on that. In the court fines, we're trending to anywhere from $200 to $300. I budgeted next year about $280. The court fines that we receive from the Rutherford County, it's running somewhere between $40 and $50. I budgeted $45. Court fines from the state of Tennessee, I budgeted $4,500. In 16-17 we went up to $4,200, and then this year looks like we're trending somewhere around $10,000, so we've picked up a little bit there. DUI impound fees, these are the cars that are impound, and we do charge for that, so we do get revenue from that, so I budgeted that at about $2,000. Sex offender registry fees, I budgeted about $1,500 for that. That's kind of minimal. And then in our other revenues, this is just kind of miscellaneous revenues. Of course, we have a little bit of interest, anticipating about $15,000 because you know, of our fund balance, our bank balance is up there pretty good now. So we're getting a little bit of interest, even though the interest rate is really terrible. I budgeted $15,000 for next year. We get rental from Clearwire cell tower at one of the fire stations, and we get a set amount, $18,000 a year. I did budget for some sale of general items, fixed assets, police supplies, and police fixed assets. Kind of minimal amounts there, but we do receive revenues from gov deals on that when we have items that are on the agenda to be auctioned off. We have a grant called GHSO. That's the government, which I think it's now THSO. We don't have in it THSO,
Yes.
Chief. I budgeted $15,000 for next year on that. Some years we've gotten more, done more, gotten more. Some years we don't get as much, but anticipating around $15,000. And our forecast will probably come up a little bit. I think we probably have another reimbursement or two coming before the end of the year. Contributions to the Old Timers Festival. This is revenue that we get from donations for the Old Timers Festival. I budgeted about $10,000. Pageant, we charge fees for the pageant. I budgeted $1,500 for that. Grant, we have applied for a FEMA grant, and we are budgeting about $10,000 in revenue from that. It's probably going to be more than that, but we don't have exact numbers. So, just to get something on the records, we did budget $10,000. And then other financing sources. This is just miscellaneous income that random checks that we get for like refunds or just really any kind of miscellaneous income that doesn't go to any of the other line items. I budgeted $8,000 for that. And then we have recycling from the newspapers that are in the bin out back. I budgeted $500 for next year. And then of course, for total revenue for next year, we're anticipating $21,937,000. Of course, we can cheat right now, and we can look at what our expenditures are. The expenditures for next year are going to be right around $20,507,000. So that's going to leave us with a surplus of $1.4 million. And before we go on to the expense side of it, does anybody have any questions on the revenue side?
Phyllis, one thing on the Clearwire for fire station, the rent for the cell tower, that will be going away.
It will be?
We just got a notice, Ricky just got a notice a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it's been 3 weeks probably.
Yeah. They're getting ready to take that tower down.
Taking it down?
I've not gotten anything officially from Clearwire
They're gonna try to leave it as long as they can. They don't currently have anyone even looking. One thing, that tower's short because of the airport. So they were gonna try their best to hold it for a little while. But even at that, at best,
It may be going away.
right.
Should we take that out?
I would not bank on
It
it.
didn't sound very promising that they would find anybody just because of the sheer height of the tower. It was not going to really suffice for any big carriers, and Clearwire was the only one that had ever used it, and honestly, I don't think it worked very well for them either. Again, because the airport, it regulated how high it could go, and it was so close because of the flight path there, so it'll more than likely be going away.
Thanks for
On
that
the,
information.
you said that the interest that we got on the money, what was the interest rate we got on the,
I don't even know if we get 0.5%.
yeah,
It's very little. And, you know, we could do things like invest the money, but right now the interest rate it's just not real great. And we have thought about, you know, looking at that, but And we could bid it out to see what kind of interest we could get, because we have enough in
Does
reserves
it have to
now.
stay in, could it be put like in a 9-point CD?
We can do lots of different things with it. The last time we did an investment, we had to leave the money in there for a certain length of time. And that's the thing that scares you, because if we have a major disaster, our money's tied up. So, if anybody ever wants me to, investigate that, we can certainly do that, especially as our fund balance grows. We can always bid it out and see what kind of offers we get. And right now, our reserves, our fund balance, we're anticipating at the end of the year to be around $18 million. So.
Yeah, just 0.5%, that's not hardly nothing.
Yeah, it's not a lot. Any other questions about revenue? Anybody see anything else needs to be corrected, or any ideas, thoughts? If not, we'll move on up to the expense side of the general fund. And let me get you over here where we can see if I can get us.
There's all of our big money right here.
Okay, we'll start with the legislative board. Didn't make a lot of changes here. I can tell you right now, the one thing you're going to see in pretty much every department as we go through the budget today is the health insurance line, which is object code 142. We have increased that line due to the increase in claims that we're seeing right now. So pretty much every department's got an increase there. Let's go here. I can't quite see what I want to see here. So pretty much for legislative, about the only thing we changed would be the health insurance. It went up by $10,000, and our budget went up almost $10,000 overall. For the judicial, pretty much, did increase the legal services. These are mainly Evans invoices that come in. Last year we were at 39, the year before 39, so we'd had a budget of 35, so I increased that to 40. And then, of course, the difference in the health insurance increase was pretty much the only difference there. City court, you'll notice the health insurance went down in this department. That's because we had a turnover in that department, and in general, we've had 2 people with family coverage, and now we have 2 people, but one has family and one has individual coverage, so the premium is not quite as high that we charge the department for. Pretty much, that's pretty much it in that department, just some small minor changes.
Phyllis, what's the travel for?
The travel for court,
Yes, ma'am.
if they go to any kind of class, they get mileage reimbursement if they, use a personal vehicle. And there are some classes that they can go to.
Yeah, there's 1 or 2 that they go to every year that they're mandated to go to.
That's Cindy and Kamish.
Mm-hmm.
They just went on one, last 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, I think, yeah.
Okay, next department is city administrator. On the line the wages, of course, pretty much throughout the budget in all the departments, wages have gone up right around 3% because everybody was bumped up 1 step according to our step system. So that's where you'll see what the explanation is for the wage increase. The other wages that you see here, line 129, this is the allocation that we do for from one fund to another for, say, for city administration. The city administrator, we charge part of their wages to water sewer fund and part of it to stormwater fund as well as the general fund, because they, you know, technically they are doing services for other funds, and it's not fair to charge the general fund for all of it whenever they are servicing other funds, other, you know, departments that are in the other funds. I think that's, that and then the health insurance is about it for that department. We don't have an elections anymore. City recorder, I reduced their publications of formal and legal notices, and then we increased the health insurance, and then, of course, the wages and benefits that go along with the wage increase. Pretty much that's about it for that department as far as increase. Tax department, there's a huge increase in this department, and it's related to the reappraisal fees. We do get billed from the county, probably late. I think we usually get a bill late in the year, later on this year. We'll get a bill, and we got the numbers from Lisa Nolan with the county for the reappraisal fee. It's up quite a bit from the last time we did a reappraisal. I think the last time we did one, it was somewhere around 160. So it's went up tremendously this time. Not sure if they used somebody different or they did a different type of appraisal. There's a little bit of a increase for a repair and maintenance service, and that has to do with the local government. They naturally go up about, I don't know, 5 to 10% each year. And plus, we're going to be using the new software next year, so we needed to adjust for that. Tax relief, we're seeing more citizens that are taking advantage of the tax relief, so we're budgeting a little bit more next year for that, that reimbursement to them. Finance department, of course, finance department does, you know, reconciles all the bank accounts for all the funds. Therefore, we allocate some of our wages out to the other funds. And, you know, we're cutting payables checks for other funds, so it's only fair that we allocate some of that. Other than that, and then we do have a new line for machinery and equipment rental. We're looking into a new printer for Felicia for printing, purchasing documents, and being able to print and scan and email all at one time. Local government, the repair and maintenance line item went up just a little bit. Of course, health insurance went up. It's pretty much that, all of that for finance. I will be redoing the allocation part of general fund, which is the line 129. As soon as we get final numbers on employee wages, that's when I do that allocation. I can't really do it right now because it'll be constantly changing. So when we get to the final version, because we know we've had some requests for staffing. So when we get all the staffing completely done, we'll be changing that allocation amount. And generally, it means a little bit more of a reduction to the general fund, so hopefully that'll work out the same this time. Human resource, pretty much the same all the way down. We did continue with the line item 259, which is the other professional services. We always put a fairly large amount in there for legal fees, any kind of settlements. We budget it there. It may get moved to another department, or we may not use it at all. So that's the explanation on that. And you can see her budget only went up about $5,000 overall. Engineering went up a little bit on other professional services. I think they have some plans to utilize some of the engineering services to look at some different projects that they are wanting to investigate. Other than that, pretty much stayed the same. IT, we have a little bit on, wages and health insurance, which is normal. Only increased the phones, telephones by 1,000, and I think phones are supposed to even come down a little bit. if
They
I'm not-
should, yes.
So, even as we add people, we're adding more phones, and maybe that'll offset some of that. So, other than that, we got the Microsoft licensing issue that tends to be going up every year. And then we get a true-up every year too, so we get kind of double whammied on that. That's pretty much it for the IT department. Planning department, we will not have let's see, what is that? The land use study, we won't have that expense. It may some of it fall over into next year, but we're gonna try to get all that into this year's budget, or into this year's, forecast. If we don't, what we'll probably do is go ahead and accrue it, for this year so that we won't see that expense, hit next year.
And was that in the other professional services?
That,
Drop there?
Yes,
yes, it's in the Object Code 259, which is the other professional services. I still have, MPO dues and transportation things that we have to pay out of that line item. Other than that, GNRC went up a little bit on line item 720 for the, it's listed as grants and donations, but I guess we kind of consider that part of our nonprofit list. And the nonprofit list, I think, is the very last page of your packet. The nonprofits are kind of spread throughout the budget into about 4 or 5 different departments. So for this department, for planning, we have GNRC and RTA, the Regional Transit Authority. That pretty much explains planning department, and please feel free to stop me anytime if you have any questions. Codes administration, we did increase the repair and maintenance service line. That's for the annual maintenance on the new software, the new permitting software. That's pretty much the biggest line item that we changed. Everything else pretty much stayed the same. Of course, wages did go up. City Hall, we had minimal change there. The main one would be with the insurance. This is our liability and property insurance. I did increase it by about $45,000. I looked at all the insurance invoices that we had gotten this year, and we've had a pretty big increase.
Phyllis, what's the membership and fees? The $235 with City Hall?
Chamber of Commerce fees.
Thank you.
I think that's pretty much it for City Hall. We did increase the repair and maintenance building because we are trying to do some upgrades. We added additional 10,000 in for next year. Pretty minimal increases there. Of course, we didn't rebudget for census, thank goodness. Hopefully won't have to do another census for a while. Police Department, want to point out a couple things when you're looking at wages here because they look a little strange. We haven't added any staff, but yet you can see that the hourly's gone up and dispatch went down. Well, that's mainly because last year we accidentally budgeted for I think it was 2 officers in dispatch that should not have been there, so that was basically a formula error. So we kind of moved that all around and got that all straightened out this year. Other than that, of course, this department is really large, so you can see the large impact of the health insurance will have on this department. The chief did request some additional additional expense for training with the new officers that he has. They all have to go through training, so we allowed, put an allowance in there for some additional training. And then under line item 234, this is where the LexisNexis, I don't know what you call it, it's not a membership, it's a reporting tool that y'all
Yeah,
use.
LexisNexis, Accurate is what we've been working on to get set up for our crime analysis center that makes the information available to the public, but allows us to have internal crime analysis in a much greater detail.
And it's $1,350 a month on that. Going down through here, we increased the professional services for New World or Tyler. I guess it's now Tyler. They do come in and do some training occasionally. Going down through here, very minimum. We do have the, we did put some expense in here for the Rutherford County ECD training. That's actually money that we already have. A couple of years ago, we had gotten some grants and we haven't spent all the money, so the chief asked that I go ahead and budget for some expense for that dispatch. But that is money that is in, been set aside for that training, training for the dispatchers. As I mentioned earlier, we get reimbursed for the vests, and here's the expense side of that grant, which is estimated about $8,000 for next year. We did increase the K-9 object code 796 just a tad for the K-9. That's pretty much it. You know, the bulk of his increases was the health insurance, and that was right around $200,000. So
There was a big jump with the Metro contract as well.
mm-hmm. Any other questions? We'll move on down to fire department. We have about $60,000 increase in health insurance. All the other changes were very minimal. We have some grant expense that we're anticipating for next year. We budgeted for that. Other than that, everything, you know, just very minimal changes. Emergency services, this is where we do some of our hazmat budgeting. We've got some first responder training. It's $3,000. We've got the some annual maintenance on. Do we still do the lightning detection? Okay.
Yep.
We've got annual maintenance of $5,000 on the lightning detection. And then we have down here in 734, 788, and 793 object codes. We have some of our nonprofits. We've got $24,700 for Box 100 and Rutherford County EMS. And then the Box 100, we have put in $15,000 for the box, and then the Rutherford County EMS is $9,700. We did put in $10,000, which is pretty much generally what we budget for on the hazmat line item, and that could be for you know, equipment, anything related to hazmat. And then we've got the rescue squad nonprofit for $25,000 here in this department. Very minimum change in that department, $200. Highways and streets. Again, we've got the health insurance issue here at about $30,000. Pretty much think that's about it. Yep, that's about it for highways and streets. Everything else stayed pretty much the same as last year's budget. Fleet maintenance. We did increase the fleet for police by $10,000 for next year. Increased Parks and Rec a little bit, about $2,000. We added a line item for the maintenance department's fleet. Vehicle repairs, we generally charge those out here. And we increased the fire departments by 500. Other than that, we increased the operating supplies by 4,000. We increased the fuel, oil, I think it was mainly for oil changes, we increased by $1,000. Other than that, that's pretty much the changes.
Phyllis, do we need to add anything for economic development since they have a vehicle as well?
He is getting a vehicle. We haven't added anything. He's going to have a brand new vehicle. Maybe next year we'll probably need to add something, for oil changes or something, but I think we'll probably be okay for the first year. Moving on down to culture, we only have a little bit of nonprofit in culture. It's this would be these MCHRA. This would be Smyrna Laverne Assistance Coalition, Smyrna Laverne Food Bank, CASA, Rutherford County, and Laverne Boxing. Parks and Rec. Pretty much we, so you've got health insurance issue here, just, normal. And everything else is pretty much about the same as previous year. Maintenance, this is our new department, so we're still learning and still trying to get a good handle on what the expenses are going to be for this department. We're at the end of our first year, or 3/4 of the way into the first year, so we forecasted for the rest of the year, and then didn't tweak a whole lot here. Actually, pretty much left it about the same. As this department continues and we get a better idea of what their needs are going to be, we may, have to come back either at a later date and make some adjustments, or make adjustments for the next year. But I think we're doing pretty good on those. Library. Again, you've got the wage increase, a little bit of the health insurance increase. We did take the fuel, not the fuel, but the natural gas expense down a little bit in that department. We did increase the Comcast line 248, the object code 248. They had a Comcast. They had a grant that was helping them with their Comcast invoices, and that grant has now gone away. We decreased books a little bit, and that's about it for them. We didn't do a whole lot of changes. Economic development, we did make a few little changes here. As this department is growing and having more needs and expanding their travel and conferences and tuition for different memberships, we made some adjustments. In the line 235, last year we budgeted $2,500. This year we budgeted $6,880. This is for the ICSC membership, the Atlanta registration, and the booth fees. I know we've talked about the other professional services, 259, whether to continue with Buxton. We left that in there. I don't know how much longer the Buxton contract is, but I'm sure anybody that we get is going to be around the same price range. On the travel line, we increased it just a tad because we moved some of the travel for the ICSC conference down in line item 297. We did increase that line item to $12,700. We had discussed this one, and we decided we wanted to try to capture all of the travel-related expenses here, because we do have several more people that are going, traveling to Vegas than we've had generally in the past years. So we're trying to capture all those in expenses, and it's ongoing change. We may have to increase it again next year. We're just trying to, Tom gave us a pretty good schedule of his travels for next year and the cost with it, but everything's subject to change. We never know when prices are going to go up, or, we've underestimated. We did put the fuel line in here for Tom's vehicle, and we did put in for $1,100 for machinery and equipment rental, and that is for,
Monitor, that new lady that has a monitor,
okay,
and even in rental repairs.
okay, yeah, equipment that they'll have to rent when they go to some of these conferences. And then we have the Chamber of Commerce, part of the nonprofit donation, and this is for the economic development, the convention and tourism part, and the destination Rutherford that is on your nonprofit list. Public relations, pretty much, we did add a line item 260. We added $5,000, and that's for some Channel 3 upgrade maintenance type issues. And then we do have, $10,000 in there for equipment for Channel 3. So we're trying to do some things there to get Channel 3 some updated equipment and improve the service there. Pretty much that's all the change in the public relations. The next section is our debt service. We pretty much, we have to go by the schedules that are given to us for principal and interest, and we added those changes. Not really a lot of changes between this year and next year, other than the radios, capital lease is coming down, and that one will be going away pretty soon. Other than that, that's about it for the debt service. And then the last section of the general fund, before we get to capital and other operating expenses, is the operating transfers. The only thing that we have included so far in the budget is the normal $30,000 transfer that we do to the drug fund, and then the $55,000 that we normally do every year to the senior citizens fund. Any questions for the general fund expenses? If you don't have any questions, if you do have questions, like, after we leave here, please feel free to email me, call me, text me, whatever you need to do if you have any questions, because it's kind of a lot to absorb, and I know you guys have looked over, the documents from last week. You have a new print in front of you. There wasn't a lot of changes, just cleaning up some typos and tweaking a few numbers here and there. Of course, we constantly have payroll changes every week, every pay period. We have somebody that's either moved from one department to another, or we've hired somebody, or we've terminated somebody. So those are ongoing, but pretty much when we get to this point, actually we could probably do a couple more changes up until the first reading, but generally we try to just cut off at some point and just absorb the difference in next year. But at some point in time we have to cut off payroll because that's ongoing. We can make changes every 2 weeks on that. I did go ahead and pull the documentation that's for the changes in the payroll that's going to be processed this week, and we had Chief two new officers and 3 that had graduated, so their pay went up a little bit.
Yes,
And we had 2. Do we have 2 new officers?
yes.
Okay. So I did make those changes in this version, so. If you don't have any further questions, we'll start looking at the capital list. And it's kind of a capital / other operating. And as you know, we started with a $1.4 million surplus. And this list is fairly large. And we discussed a lot of these items during the retreat. We did pull a lot of items forward into the 17-18 year. To approximate tune of almost $1 million. So, if we hadn't pulled that forward, we would be in a lot worse shape than what this schedule is going to tell us. So, for the fire department, they had several different scenarios. This, of course, is the scenario for the 15 firefighters, and that comes out to about $954,000. We have the reevaluation of shift commanders. I know Ricky's talked about that, doing some promotions, reevaluating the whole shift commander pay, because the shift commander is pretty much leading that shift and taking on a big responsibility. We have training, AEMT training that was requested during retreat of $30,000. We have medical supplies of $15,000, and in the fire prevention line item of $21,000. We have a request for an admin assistant to either be shared with 3 departments or 1 department, or however that's going to work out. We have that position in this schedule.
Phyllis, that position, is that hourly or is that salary?
Probably, I don't know. We could do it either way. Usually it falls under an hourly, but it's according to how we structure it and how we do the job description as to how we'll do that pay on that position. We generally, come up with the job description and give it to Thompson and Associates and let them make recommendations to us of how that should be handled. I'm not sure if we're, if that position is going to be for 1 or 3 departments, or how that's going to work out. We do have a building inspection position that's been requested. We have a summer intern for the engineering with no benefits, approximately $12,500. We do have a request for electronic sign for the library. We do have a request for streets for a laborer, $50,000, and then we have a request for the brush truck of $110,000. Is that a pretty good price for that, Garland? 108. Okay. And then we have, of course, the police department's request. They're asking for 7 personnel. That would be 3 officers, 3 detectives, and 1 admin person. And we have the, well, if I could get this thing to hide over here. Let's see here. We have the a request for patrol vehicles, 18 of them, 13 patrol, 2 narcotics, and 3 for CID. It's $1,109,000. And then we have the radio replacement of right around $1,042,000. And then for the maintenance department, we have had a request for a full-time person. And I'm hung up.
Got the total too high.
I know, it's too many dollars there. Okay, here we go.
Have a good blood, sweat, and tears song.
We have the full-time maintenance person at $50,000. And then we have a request for 2 Parks and Rec staff at approximately $100,000. And then for the last 2 items are not general fund, and that is the 3/4 ton truck and the F-650 side dump truck, and I think, that, we,
The quote came in actually at about $85,000.
And since that's stormwater, we was thinking about doing it in the next budget year anyways, as opposed to bringing it forward.
1819 or 1920?
No, 1819,
Yeah.
instead of bringing it forward.
Now, these are not, these are items for 1819.
Yeah,
So do I need to change that to 85? I think the
yeah, I think that's,
documentation I had was,
85's the
Okay.
correct number.
okay. So that now changes our capital and operating total to 4,302,000. And of course, I've given you the budget from last year, which is kind of irrelevant, and then I've, as department heads forecasted out into the future, I went ahead and documented that so that you would have that to kind of be looking at for future years. But right now, we're more concerned with the fiscal year for 1819. And this is the time that you all can discuss, have an open dialogue discussion on this. See, how you want to approach this. We generally should not be taking money out of reserves for operating, because operating is a recurring expense. You don't want it to get into that cycle, because you'll be depleting your reserves pretty quickly if you do a recurring expenses. Your one-time expenses, they are what they are. We can dip into reserves for those. We can not dip into reserves for those. That's basically this board's decision. So, I know in the past, last couple of years, what we've done is kind of, the board take this list, look at it, make some recommendations, send them to me and the mayor, or me and Bruce, whoever you feel more comfortable sending the information to, as long as it gets to me at some point in time. Make your recommendations, and obviously we can't, I don't know how we could do the 4 million. That's up to the board to decide, how we could do that. But now I'll turn it over to you guys, because that's, time for y'all to discuss how you want to approach this.
Phyllis, in the past with radios, we bonded out radios.
We have bonded out radios before. And I believe we talked about that was going to be over, is it 2019? Is that the, I think it's 2019. I've got a schedule here that.
That's the last one. Yes, sir.
Let's see, it should be.
When we do bond out the radios, there's an extra cost than if you just bought them straight out, right, Chief?
There would be an extra cost if we did something through Motorola, or we actually borrowed the money and did a bond to do it. We would pay the additional interest on that. Yes.
Yeah, the last payment we will make on the radios that we bonded out 10 years ago will be September the 15th of 2019. So we have 2 more payments on that. Those payments are $129,000 each year.
Chief, we still using all them radios?
Plus some.
Yeah, more than what we had, because we've added 2 as we went.
Right.
The, some
Some
of
of them
fall
was
by the
replaced.
Some of them have
Some of
fallen
them, we replaced them.
Yes,
Yes.
some of them fall by the wayside for
So
whatever
we're,
reason,
we're still paying for some that we're not using no more.
what we bought before. yes.
Right,
Not too many.
Not a lot of them. And then we have that deal with the Model 2500s that are
The mobiles,
the mobiles that are going out of service, basically.
and then the portables too,
Right.
next year.
And then as with the vehicles, I know the breakdown here with the 13 patrol, 2 narcotics, 3 CID. With the narcotics or the CID ones, can that come out of drug fund at all?
Narcotics, yes, we can. It depends on what's available there. We could also,
I don't think we have a lot we're using a lot of that money this year.
in the regular drug fund. We've got two separate things that are there. We got the regular drug fund, and then we have federal asset forfeiture. And federal asset forfeiture is based solely upon the cases that our task force officer, or they come here and we do a joint investigation of some sort. Anything that comes back from them, we have to request, correct me if I'm wrong, Phyllis, we have to thoroughly document and request permission to purchase specific things like equipment, things of that nature. We can't use it for people, et cetera, but we can do for equipment and those needs. Is that right?
That's right.
Because they're,
And asset forfeiture is also known as equitable sharing. It goes by a whole slew of names. So if you hear me say equitable sharing and him say asset forfeiture, we're talking the same language. We just
they're a pain.
they are very a pain.
It's the feds though, so, go figure.
They're very, very picky. And if you do something out of step, out of program, out of order, they will not hesitate to put you out of compliance.
Alderman Jones can help us with that understanding, can't you, sir?
Oh, yeah. Do you know where you stand now with your officer with the DEA partnership? Where your officer was with DEA and they made the big...
We have one task force officer that's assigned there, that's Matt Moore.
Okay.
And he was a patrol officer when we assigned him over there. We're in our current fiscal year, federal fiscal year agreement with him, and we get reimbursed, what, Phyllis, 16,000 a year, I guess, overtime that he works there. We get reimbursed for that overtime, but that's where the majority of our federal asset forfeiture dollars comes from, is him being involved in an investigation. And then several agencies share that, the agencies involved in the investigation.
Yeah, the question was, you remember the last case where they found the money in the buckets and everything?
Yes, sir, and we're still waiting on that. We
I
haven't
know it
heard
takes
one
a long
thing.
Yeah.
And it's almost every week or two, Phyllis and I are discussing that, hadn't heard a word and so on, but
Yeah.
once all of that goes through in South Florida and all that's done, apparently he agreed to a settlement with the Fed for so much time and so on and so forth. And the overwhelming majority of that money was forfeited, but now we gotta wait on the other end, the fiscal folks in DC or headquarters, to make a determination as to what their share off the top will be, and then what's left of that will be shared with the assisting agencies then.
It's kind of like the old saying, one bird in the hand's worth two in the bush.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, I pretty much check on a daily basis, as I check the SunTrust, our bank accounts on a daily basis anyway, as far as making sure that we have adequate funds there, and I always check the equitable sharing to see if we've gotten anything, and haven't seen anything lately. And I don't know, we generally don't even get notified ahead of time.
No, they do it and,
They do it and we find out afterward, oh, we got money. I mean, we
Yeah.
got $70,000 back in January, I think, or
yeah,
February, and
we did, and didn't
like-
expect it.
we were like, where'd that come from?
Well,
So,
it's kind of like state asset forfeiture too. It takes forever sometimes. And we had a case, if y'all remember, on Stone Mark Trail, where we got a lot of different kinds of drugs. I think it was, about 7.5 pounds of weed, and we got coke, we got some pills, et cetera, and a little over 65,000 cash. And we had a notification a few weeks ago that there had not been a claim filed with the Tennessee Department of Safety Legal Division. So that will run its course, and that will actually be part of state drug fund dollars once that's turned over. But once again, no telling when that could be. It's probably going to be in the next few months, 2 or 3, maybe at the most.
we're in about the 16th month on that case, because it was December of 2016, and here
Yes.
we are, April of 2018, so we're at the 16-month mark, and I haven't known it to take quite this long.
No, and I think part of that was the type case it was and
There's a
the
lot,
massive amounts.
there's a lot of agencies involved in that, not just us.
Oh, yeah.
Chief Walker, I have a question on the staff that you've requested. My question is, I know that we've been struggling to attract the right kind of officers, and that we've budgeted for these officers in previous budgets, and the net
Yes.
effect with the attrition that we've had is we're further behind now than we were then, even though we had those officers budgeted. So how are you going to attract these people in this fiscal
We're
year?
going to keep doing what we've been doing, going to job fairs, not just job fairs, but like Middle Tennessee State, where it's an information and exchange, et cetera, and other educational facilities too. I can tell you this, we have a young man who is our third MTSU CJ student to do an internship. When we do an internship with them, we go through the full-blown background packet, the whole works up front. And then we bring them in and they can actually see and be involved in all of our training, et cetera. We got a young man now whose dad worked 27 years as a law enforcement officer in Indiana. He was in the U.S. military. His wife went to middle, got her degree, and then he used his GI Bill. He graduates next month, and he will probably be a Laverne Police Department employee before he actually gets his diploma, because he's already been through everything. He has passed all of our testing requirements, et cetera, and he had his medical physical the other day, and April 19th he's scheduled for his psychological. And I don't think there'll be any problem with that, to be honest with you. So probably about the first part of May, before he graduates, he'll be an employee. And he's already ready to go to the academy as soon as we can get him in. But that's going to be July before we can.
Right.
But we're going to keep working those avenues and those ways of trying to recruit. It's kind of like our dispatchers. People apply like crazy. Last Saturday, we had 10, I believe it was, Cheryl, that had said they were coming to test. And then something like 1 or 2 is all that actually not showed up, but passed the test. So that's the problem. And when we have an unemployment rate of 5% or lower, it makes it much more difficult for every profession, to be honest with you, to try to hire.
Right, absolutely.
You had some that, after what they call orientation, kind of the initial thing, they didn't come back. They knew, they seen what was involved, and they just didn't want to pursue it no more.
Well, not after we hired them.
No, that's at
Up
the
front,
beginning.
yes, sir.
Up front.
Yes, sir.
They,
In that
they seen-
recruiting process up front, they would see and know what it was. In today's world, there's a lot of concern now that didn't used to be there. And
The average person don't know what's involved, and just, they see a dispatcher different than a police person, but really, a lot of times the dispatcher has a tougher job than the patrolman.
they're that first responder. Right. They're the first ones you talk to, and we play them when they come in to test, to do the written test, and if they pass it, then they go in and do the listening and keyboarding and so on. It's actually set up on a PC, as if they were sitting there as a dispatcher to listen and record them. And we play them actual audio of actual, for real, everything goes to heck in a handbasket calls. And some of them have looked and said, this is not for me. And that's a good thing, because we don't waste time and money on them down the road. But still, it's difficult because you can't get folks in here.
And how are we handling as far as when we send them off to the trainings? Do we have any kind of a contract with them that they have to stay a certain amount of time before they move on to another?
We don't send the telecommunicators off. We do all of it online.
I'm talking about the police
The
officer.
law enforcement officers, yes, ma'am. If you'll remember, we did that 2 years ago, year and a half ago is when it got going. We have a contract. It's prorated on 3 years. If it's within the first year after they graduate from the academy, if it's within 3 years before that first year is up, then it's 100%. If it's in the second year but before the third, then that's 66%. And then in that last year, if they don't stay the full 3 years, it's 33.33% of what we spent on them to get them trained.
Okay, good.
And
Is
that's a
that going
contract.
okay?
Pardon me?
Is that going okay as far as retention goes?
Yes. As far as we know, we haven't lost anybody yet,
That's good. Okay.
as far as we know. And we're getting some good young folks, and they understand that, and some of them may be backing out up front because of that contract too, because they can't just come to us, get hired, and get the training and bail out.
I think we might be down on volume, but we're up on quality.
We're getting some really good quality folks and young folks.
One of the things about that too, Chief, and I'll bring my daily job into it again. When I initially asked for that contract, I was thinking along the level that would suffice, and the way that y'all set it up would do. But one of the things that we're noticing now is companies are getting so desperate, they will pay the penalty.
Yes.
To get that individual. So we're gonna have to tweak it somehow. I was looking for a partnership. And what I mean by that is if I work here in Laverne and I decide to leave Laverne and go to White House, then the partnership as far as the payment for the contract and everything, it needs to be negotiated between, let's say, the two city administrators and say, okay, you're getting such and such from us. And, you know, as a partnership, we should have to sign off. I mean, not to hold anybody prisoner, but I'm just saying, because it's going to happen. They'll waive that price and they'll pay it to get someone that's in the level and the quality that we've got here.
And the other thing we're facing now is some departments are offering a sign-on bonus of anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 if you are post-certified.
Yeah.
So they could take that money and pay their buyout fee.
Yeah.
And it not actually impact them. And we're seeing that with some of the larger agencies because we're all competing.
And not to prolong the meeting here, but I mean, it's really getting serious when what brought to mind is when you said, when the race gets in for hiring people. I mean, they're actually paying off college tuitions.
Yes, sir.
For people to come to there and work for them.
Yes,
and
sir.
that's a no-brainer. I mean, that's just the way it's getting. And it's somehow everybody's going to have to put their heads together. We're going to have to come up with a plan that just makes them want to stay here.
I know the military, a couple of years ago, they was giving as much as $20,000 up front for somebody that would sign up.
Yeah.
I don't know how it is now, but about 2 or 3 years ago, if you signed up, they'd cut you a check for $20,000 on the spot.
It's true.
Well, now being a recipient of one of those, they take the taxes out before they give it to you. Yeah, that was one of the first things they did.
It's not a free loan, is it?
Chief McCormick, I know we spent quite a bit of time talking about the budget, and so I know this has got all 15 all at once.
Yes, sir.
And how would that stretch your team as far as training?
As we said before, 15 would put us where we need to be. But if you notice, we did come back and we offered those, we did give some leeway there and put some other things together for you, because that is a big impact on us. 15 people are a lot for us to take on at one time. We've done that once before with 12, and it's a pretty big task because we're still a small department. And that was another reason we did break it down to where even it was a little more manageable, not only for y'all on the money side, but for us on the handling side of that. Because 12 months goes by fast, and, but it definitely impacts us, if that answers your question. Does 15 versus 12 or 9 make a difference? Well, it does. It even internally, because we have to dedicate a lot of time to those people.
So what would be the ideal situation to encompass training, not to stretch your resources for the community and your teams?
To help everything across the board and just cut right on out of all of the guessing, if we could get 9 men this year, we would be perfectly content with that. And that is more manageable for us. That gives us one more man. Now, we may not put them exactly as I'm saying this, but we try to equalize it across the board. It's 3 stations and 3 shifts. So the 9 men, that's basically 1 man per station per shift. And so we look at that as an equal across the board fill-in. Now, it may be that 3 of those men go to one station and the others go to another station. I don't mean that every one of them will be 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1 across the board. It's just where we need to fill them in and what equipment we need to put in place. As we've said, and Chief Clark has talked to everyone as well about medical responses and things like that. We're on a constant juggle and keeping up with where we need people and on what equipment. And, so the 9 we would be satisfied with if we could squeeze that out. That would make it a lot easier on your budget. It would make it a little easier on us on the training aspect of it across the board. And I think our second option there is, I think it was doing 9 and then 6. And I think it was not any for a couple of years except for 2 specialty people. But if we could do the 9 this year and maybe the 6 next year, in our eyes, that probably would be the ideal situation. If we had a full-time training division and already had our training facility up and running and we could do every bit of it here, I'd tell you that the 15 would be absolutely no problem. But, that's a lot of people to put someone with to mentor as well. I mean, you throw 15 guys out there, especially if we would go with some of them not being, which we were going to try to do, not fully qualified on the front end and send them to school. They still have a lot to learn. Sending them to fire school doesn't get them ready to go on a truck here. There's a lot of things for them to have to learn in-house. So, but
Ricky, have you figured out what would, just say 9 men would cost total?
I'm gonna make sure that I get this correct.
Take out about.
9 men and or women. He gets me all the time. He knows what I mean.
Yeah.
Take out about 360 out of that
Yeah.
954 number.
Yeah.
559.
How much you say?
Take out 360,000 out of that 954 number.
Okay.
It's 559, 395.
One more time, Bruce.
559, 395.
Thank you.
So we give the police department 9 and the fire department 9 and what you asking for, Chief? 7?
Yes, sir.
7. That would go over the revenue we got left over for probably about $200,000, and that's roughly.
That's Phyllis's call.
And that's no one else
Nobody will get nothing.
getting out anything else.
And I think both of us understand that. I brought one thing with me so you got an idea. Even though we have the staff we have, we've got some FTO right now training, and we've got one in the academy now, and we got another one hopefully that will start first part of July, and we're we're gonna be testing again. Just very quickly, first shift with, the personnel we have that are assigned there today, there's an average in April for each day, 4.2 scheduled up front to work, which means they're not, everything's built in, training, military leave, vacation, et cetera. 4.2 per day for first shift, and if you count the lieutenant and the sergeants, it's 5.8 on the average or schedule. For second shift, it's 4.7 and 5.9, and then it's 4.1 and 5.7 for third shift. So that's a real true number that we actually have, and that's part of the problem is because we're 24/7, 365, and that's where we wind up having to have more people in order to process something because it's not just one shift.
Honestly, I don't have no problem with nine firemen and 7 policemen, but poor man Bayless sits down to do the budget. Somebody needs to let me know where we're gonna get the extra money at. You know, I have probably no problem putting on 15 firemen. Somebody just tell me where we get the money, I'd be happy to put it in the budget. But until somebody tells me they want 15 firemen and 7 policemen, if you don't tell me where we get the money at, I just don't see putting them on there and not have the money to pay for them. Because I know, Chief, you can use every bit of 7, maybe probably use 9, because that's just one, 3 per shift. You talk about one man, you don't talk about 3. I mean, that's not even putting 1 per shift like you, Ricky. One man ain't gonna do you no good unless we give you 3.
Right.
But I'm all for it.
And women.
And women.
I'm all for it.
So along that vein, one thing that I do think that we need to talk about is the assistant for economic development, because economic development is what stimulates income for the city. I know Tom's been doing a great job, working really long hours. The reason I think that he needs an assistant is that he can't be at a convention and on the phone making appointments. He needs someone to help him with those things. We've already seen a big increase in our economic development income, from our sales taxes. And I think that in order to perpetuate that we need to make that investment in that one employee. It's not a huge line item. It is an operating expense, but I think it'll more than pay for itself. I just want to put that out there.
I'm actually going to agree with you on this, and it not only helps with economic development, this is something that's going to help with engineering, planning, could potentially help with codes. So that's something that's definitely needed.
And the other thing, when we go to recruit these businesses, and especially we go to Atlanta or wherever, if Tom's got a person that's used to dealing with planning and engineering, they know what's going on, and that'd be a good asset for Tom when you go to Las Vegas or you go to Atlanta, to have somebody that knows, hey, we got this potential development here, and that to be spread with 3 different departments, and I know Adam, I know Bo, I know when I go by the codes department, y'all are snowed under over there with paper in the old boardroom over there. Man, I went about 3 weeks ago, I never seen so many packets laying here, there, and yonder on the floor. So I know y'all could use some help.
And the other thing, I think it ties in with what Mayor Waldron was saying, is just having Kyle, when we go to ICSC, sometimes all kinds of things about engineering and planning and stuff that I don't know all the details, but off the top of your head. Hopefully this person will be involved enough to kind of know what's going on like that, so that you don't have to be the only one with all those details.
I guess everybody could call Phyllis and give Phyllis an earful. Only thing I'd say, if you call them and want something, tag on where the money's gonna come from.
My phone number's, it's not working right now. My phone is dead. Been trying to get Glenn to get me a new one, but he won't do it.
Not till after the,
Temporarily disconnected.
Yep.
You were limiting her emails to 2 lines, only 2 lines.
There you go.
Twitter email. I'll drop it.
But yeah, like the mayor said, you know, put together recommendations for us, and we'll look at them and see what we can do. Not to change the subject, but I do have all of the nonprofit request information over here. Some of it is bound, so I can't really make copies and send to everybody. It's a pretty big stack, and I probably couldn't email it anyway because it's so thick and so many pages. So if you want to look through any of it, stop by my office, grab them. There's a table back there. You can look at them or look at them tonight, or if you want me to bring them to the next workshop, just let me know. They're available for you. I have extra copies of the Capitol, and then there were some department lists that if anybody needs anything.
Bruce, did you ever receive that list of certifications from Rescue and Box?
We received from Box. I don't know that we've gotten anything back from Rescue yet.
No, sir. We've asked, Chief Clark's asked on multiple occasions to get those back, and we haven't gotten anything from them. Box actually sends them to us every year, whether they're asked for or not. So we keep a running Excel spreadsheet on Box 100, so.
I'll be honest, I haven't seen nothing ever since I've been. As far as qualifications, certifications, things like that, I haven't seen any of that. Now, not to say that, I don't know what you have.
We did one year, we asked pretty harshly, I guess. We pushed pretty hard to get some certifications because those things we have to know. We cannot be on an emergency scene and call somebody in to assist us and not know what we're getting. Because at that point, myself and Chief Clark are liable, and so is the city, for what happens. So if we don't get these certifications, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to call them. I'm not going to call them, and if they just show up, I'm not going to utilize them because I can't afford that. I like my house, and I know everybody that sits on this board, we spend enough money in lawsuits as there are, and we just can't do that as a city anymore. And it's the same for Box 100. If they don't give us the certifications, I'm not going to use them. But if I ask Box for them, I get them. We ask Rescue for them, we don't get them. And that's on us. That's not even on them, that's on us.
There is a list of specialty training in their packet. I don't know if it just says specialty training. I don't know if if it's certifications or not. So
certifications, the way that we ask for them are their certificates of certification. That's what we get from Box 100, and they send them to us. In fact, they send them to us all through the year. If they have a big class of some kind, they send a packet with all their certifications in it, and we even scan them in and keep them. And in fact, I'd asked Bruce, because their packet is so big, I have a copy of all their actual class certificates. That if anybody wanted to see the actual certificates and not just a letter that says, well, we are. I mean, I can sit here all day long and tell you that I can do neurosurgery, but I think you'd want to know that I had a medical license before you let me do it. And honestly, that's where I'm at this point with that. If we can't see certifications for it, it's of absolutely no use to me or the city at all.
In the recent floods that we had here, I did call for the rescue squad. One of the things was utilize I had two teams running that night. The only reason I didn't call for Smyrna's not so good in that type of situation. So, when we talk about credentialing personnel on particular types of responses, that's what we look at as far as what resources we can call. And that's the reason why we would like to know the levels of certification. They may be commercial out. I don't know because that has not been presented. Does that make sense? We have certain qualifications and job performance that we have to be satisfied with job opportunities here. I would think that would have to be the same thing that's going to be requested for job performance out in the field. So they have certain criteria they have to meet. That makes a safe or safer type response.
Who
We
was being
definitely-
asked and how long has it been that y'all been asking?
The most recent one was
2 months to 3 months, 2 months, yeah, 2-3 months.
I'll send out the email, I have to look
Yeah.
and see at what point in time. I do know that Mr. Blair replied back to me, stating that there was an illness in their membership, and that as soon as they got better, that we would receive it. I don't know the circumstances surrounding that, I don't know if they got better or what, or if it is coming. That was the situation too. However long that was, I'd have to look at that.
I think we asked right after the retreat.
We did. It was right, it was, when you asked of us to obtain that information, it was right after the retreat.
So it's been about a month.
I might have been when Dana's dad passed away, because it's been about that long. That's probably, you talking about an illness?
It was an illness.
I bet it's when,
There's a
Dana's
surgery in
father
the family. I don't remember who it was.
For a young lady.
I'm not sure.
Okay, I think that's one of the priorities. I think that's problematic that we don't have that information and even.
And it's definitely, so that y'all know, it's not that we couldn't utilize them and use them, and we would want to. Definitely. I mean, we know these people. They live in a community, and they've been here for a very long time, and I absolutely, would we use them? Yes. But we have to know that we're protected on our side as well. And I know that's what y'all want as well. Y'all never let us do the jobs we do for you, even on the city fire department, if you didn't know that we were properly qualified to do so. But I would just, like you said, we just need to know for sure that it's properly done.
And while we're talking about nonprofits, there were a few that applied that we haven't been budgeting for, just in case you want to review those. And there were some that we currently contribute to that requested more than the amount that we normally give them. So just wanted to make sure you're aware of that.
And while we're talking about nonprofits, if there are any of these nonprofits that you would like to hear a presentation from, please let us know, and we will invite them to the third budget workshop, which is 2 weeks from tonight.
I'm getting ready to go. I've already packed my stuff up.
You got them on the screen too.
Okay, I'd like to make my request right now. I would love to hear from Paul's.
We're not currently proposing to give them anything,
Yeah, I see that.
They
But
did
I'd
ask.
like to hear from them for what we've given them.
but they did ask.
We gave them nothing.
That's what we give.
But now today, being, I was over at Lake Forest today, and I seen Paul's over there. So I know that they, at least today, I know they was in Laverne I know one time, because I seen them over there.
We
You
pretty,
guys are sitting at the park, and I'm not sure what they were doing.
Probably eat lunch. I hope they was eating lunch.
Were they picking up or releasing?
That's bad.
I'm just kidding.
I know every time they come by my house, I have to look, make sure my dog's in the fence. If I got 5 toy poodles, it'd cost me a fortune to get them out of jail.
And in a way, Laverne's already donating through county taxes to Paul's, because the county funds Paul as well, so.
It's a county function, yeah.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
So what?
Any other questions, comments, or
I got a
concerns?
couple, but I will email you because I
Only
have,
thing I'll tell everybody look over the budget. Anything you call Felix about and want to add to the budget, I'm all for it. Just clip on how to pay for it, and I'll consider it. But anything that comes across my desk that's like an unfunded mandate, I can pretty well tell you I'm not going to support it. But if you put if you'll pin the way to pay for it, I'll definitely look at it. Anything else? Everybody done? I'll call this budget workshop over.